but you also want to steer a child in the right direction. So Dr. Shahzad, what would you recommend in terms of the right approach?
Well, this is a very, very challenging question that stares us in the eye. And as much as it does, I think we need to really get hold of ourselves. And my personal experience is that parenting is an art. We make blunders and we realize those blunders maybe with the third child or maybe when we have grandchildren, and that is too late. So our own children tend to suffer because of some of the preconceived notions that we have. And perhaps the main reason is that the way we have been brought up by our own parents, we tend to follow the same attitude that we perhaps were meted out. When you have children who are now young adults, who have entered adolescence, and they are now people who have their own worldview, we must not impose our views on our children. Yes, we can suggest a lot of things, but we have to realize that the Quran has never, ever, at any single place said that parents have to be obeyed come what may. So all that you can do is you can share your views with them, but the final authority or the final decision has to be made by them. Well, it's basically all their final choice. But because of the fact that we have been raised in a position or in a manner in which perhaps our own parents would have imposed their views on us, so we tend to do that as well. So I think the way to go about in this particular manner is that the biggest thing that you can really equip your child with the way when they're being brought up is that to give them a very strong moral sense of right and wrong, and to make them feel that the conscience that they have is the best judge of right and wrong. So support them in that. They are made to, they are able to find out that aptitude at a very early age. Because if you are able to find out that aptitude, which is also apparent through hobbies, then you'll be able to give the child that boost in which he or she has the capacity to excel and make a difference and to the society that he or she lives in and really contribute. So if these two things are taken care of, that you are developing their moral sense and making them contributing individuals, make them understand that they are independent human beings. They can take their own decisions. And personally, I would say that parents who impose their opinions on their grown-up children, I have some harsh words to say to them, but the least harsh of them would be that they are violating human rights. So it's a human right that you are given this independence. Let go of them. They are going to make mistakes, and let them make mistakes, because all of us made mistakes. So we are too ambitious in telling them to be righteous right when they are passing through adolescence. This is virtually impossible. This would mean that you have given them enough friendship and confidence that if they do something bad, they come to you and you embrace them instead of scolding them or telling them off. You actually embrace them and tell them that don't worry, these things happen. As is, it's absolutely fine. So I think this is another thing that we need to realize is that just as parenting is an art, correction is also an art. The art of correcting your children, when to scold them, and if at all to scold them, what to tell them, not be repetitive in telling them, praising them for their attributes. So you see, what we parents do is, without realizing the fact that they might be having a lot of good points, we make it an issue of maybe a small bad habit and keep on emphasizing that. So I think the best way is that you build that confidence, you boost their confidence by actually commending them for the good qualities they have, the good habits that they have, so that they have this confidence in their own self and self-belief that, yes, I am a worthy individual. Because if you continue to condemn them, continue to criticize them, they're just going to lose hope and faith in their own selves. And they could really be pressurized and have a very weak psyche. So yes, make friends with them, let them make mistakes. At the same time, develop their moral being as far as you can, make them true seekers of the truth, develop this thing of what we call critical thinking. So parents themselves need to get educated first. So it's like finding the right argument, the right reasoning, not imposing yourself, spending quality time with them, letting them make mistakes, and letting them take decisions about their lives, which they can even later on regret. But then this is the best way for them to learn. And then develop that superb affection in which when they come to you and they say that, well, I've made that mistake. It's not that you scold and just tell them off. It's like you embrace them and say, yes, this happens to everyone. Doesn't matter. We'll try again. We'll try again. Don't give up on yourself.
Dr. Shahzad, thank you for that.
Let's begin today with a reminder of what healthy parenting is intended to produce. when you're bringing up a son or a daughter into the adult world, there are all sorts of competencies that you're wanting to teach that child. You want to teach them emotional and relationship management skills. I mean, well, when you were 10 years old, did someone ever sit down and say, hey, let's talk about why you feel angry, or how you can handle this situation over here with your friends, or let's discuss how you're going to manage conflict with your siblings? Ideally, parents would teach you those kind of things. And always they want to go with the notion that says there's going to be a day when you reach your late adolescence and then your early adult years that you're going to launch, and you're going to need to be your own person, and I want you to feel confident and competent about managing life as a full-blown adult based on what you've determined you need to be in your own life, and the parents will provide that guidance. That's healthy thinking, and that's the way healthy parenting can unfold. Now, there are many people that I've spoken with who will say, well, it's not quite that healthy between me and my parents, because they'll talk about how the parent has this real strong narcissistic tendency where the parent has an ongoing agenda deep into the adult years. And it's like, well, you may be an adult, you may be 26 years old, you may be 48 years old, and that parent is still thinking, but you're still my child, and there's still certain things that you're obliged to do, and let me tell you what it's supposed to be. And they can have a long laundry list about all sorts of ways that you're supposed to manage life. And they can be very straightforward with you in terms of letting you know, here's the way it's supposed to be according to me, the parent. And many times these narcissistic parents can speak to you while you're a full-blown adult with a lot of guilt and shame and fear induction. It's quite a trio there, isn't it? Guilt, shame, fear. That's not a real good way to talk, but some parents just keep putting that on you. The implication is you need to keep looking to me, and it doesn't matter how old you are, you need to understand what the order of things is. I'm the top dog, you're the subordinate, don't you forget it, and you're supposed to stay in subordination to them. Now, most adults, when they begin thinking about who they want to be, it's like, I don't want to be under mommy's thumb for the rest of my life. What's going on here? Now, we're going to be getting to all of that today. What's going on inside that narcissistic parent that causes them to treat you this way? What kind of tendencies and patterns do we tend to see in them? And then I'm also going to want to see if we can figure out what does that tell us about what's on the inside. Basically, narcissistic parents will begin with, it's as though they've got this long agenda. And when you come to me, I'm going to make sure that you check off all of the little items on the agenda. And so they can remind you with many shoulds and musts and supposed tos who you're supposed to be. If you don't comply with them, then they can label you as being an ingrate. They can label you as being rebellious, or in some way that you're deviant, whatever kind of way to make you feel bad and guilty. They can put shame on you. They can have all sorts of demands and invalidations, and if you attempt to explain your reasoning and if it doesn't match up with them, then they'll come back at you with all sorts of explanations as to why you're wrong and they're right. They can be very absolute in the way that they speak. It's like, I'm not bending, I'm not budging. There's a certain way things had better be, and you're supposed to just go along with it. Acceptance can be withheld. Sometimes they can go into a sulking mode. They withdraw affection. Sometimes they may ingratiate themselves to people that are close to you, let's say your children or your friends or maybe the other siblings, and they try to be buddy-buddy with the other folks. And in doing so, they kind of sabotage you to those people. I mean, there's no end to the way that they can be exploitive and manipulative, and it's all with the notion that says, you owe me. There's a certain way you're supposed to behave, and as long as you line up the way I say, then we're going to get along just fine, but if you don't, it's going to be awful. Now, when you examine the life of a person who operates this way towards their adult kids, it reveals a great deal. First of all, there's a great deal of pride and egotism there, like me as the adult parent trying to tell you as the adult child how you're supposed to be. It's like, well, there's only one opinion in this whole world that matters, and wouldn't you know, it happens to be mine. And so even though you're an adult, you don't have the same number of years underneath you as I do underneath me. And so you just have to go along with me. But there's a real egotism and arrogance that represents. It also represents a great deal of insecurity. When parents just feel like they have to keep that tether line onto you and they have to make sure that you stay inside the mold that they have for you, the implication is that they're afraid that if they let you go and allow you to have your freedom to choose for yourself who you want to be, that you might choose separately from them, or you might show yourself to be a little bit too other in the way that you think. Certainly, when parents come across in this narcissistic way towards their adult kids, it represents a very poor understanding of human nature. People want to be able to advance in their own development through their 20s and 30s and 40s and beyond, and they want to have a sense that says, well, now that we're all adults, then perhaps we can engage with each other like that. But the narcissistic parent's like, no, that's not the way it works. You still need to be a kid, and I still need to be the parent that has all the answers. And basically, their message is, I don't want you to ever stop needing me. And so they have to feel necessary. So if you're in this kind of situation, how are you going to respond? Let me see if I can toss out a few thoughts for you as you try to figure out how to most wisely respond to these narcissistic parents. Now, first and foremost, you're not required to collapse into the parent's identity. What that parent is wanting you to do is to say that you don't have enough of a sense of your own separate self. You're just still supposed to be a part of what they are. And that's not the way human nature works. Each individual has their own unique set of preferences and ideas and interests and capabilities. And part of healthy relationships is we celebrate one another's uniquenesses. And so if the message is you can't be what you are, you need to be a version of what I say, then that represents a misunderstanding of life. And so make sure that you allow yourself to be distinct. Sameness doesn't necessarily have to be featured in every single family, but the ability to blend with our differences can be a part of that sense of healthiness. So make sure that you allow yourself to keep your unique traits and preferences and interpretations and standards, whether the other person chooses to go along with you or not. Now, a second really large thing that I want to encourage if you're up against this kind of situation, the narcissistic parent is going to continue to treat you like you're a little child. At some point, you can decide, you know, if my parent, who's ever how old they are, wants to continue to act in such a way that they are this never to be disagreed with dominant person, what I'll do is I'll say, here's what I believe. And when they come up with the inevitable guilt trips, you just say, well, that's what I believe anyway. Or when you say, these are my plans, and they say, well, change them. Well, no, I don't feel the need to change them. And if they want to keep pulling you in saying, you stay inside this tight little box, you don't have to stay inside that tight little box. And I think the more you see the distinction between their unhealthiness and the kind of healthiness that I know you want to maintain instead, we need to go ahead and make sure that the unhealthy person isn't the one calling the shots.
Nah, go on, Sheikh. Tell me, I'm a rubbish father.
Look, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
When was the last time that you sat down with Yusuf and spoke to him? Really knowing what's going on inside of him, how he's feeling.
I don't know.
Abu Yusuf, we all have our weaknesses, we have our shortcomings. But what's really important is your son needs to feel that he belongs, that he's loved, that you appreciate him. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught us that our family was of paramount importance. He would regularly pick up his grandsons and kiss them on the forehead. He would show them emotion. His daughter Fatima, when she would enter the house, he would stand up and kiss her on her forehead to show her that he loved her and that he valued her. So this is our responsibility.
George Bernard Shaw once said, "The worst sin to our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That is the essence of inhumanity. There are many psychological reasons to explain why you may feel that way, but even more that shows how harmful giving someone the cold shoulder can be. Many people believe that giving the silent treatment is a dignified response to an argument, but it's not. The silent treatment is a form of ostracism. The perpetrator often deflects, evades, subverts, or rejects your input, thus freezing you out completely. Their withdrawal leaves you feeling confused and hurt until you eventually get used to it. According to the professor of psychology, Kipling William at Purdue University, it's a form of passive abuse. It's employed with the intent to punish someone and thus yields harmful repercussions. Here are 6 reasons why the silent treatment can harm you. Number 1, it dehumanizes the other person. Did you know early civilizations equated ostracization to death because it was interpreted as expulsion from humanity and even expulsion from oneself? We are social beings designed to form and maintain relationships. Social ostracizing via silent treatment frustrates these relationships. According to a 1976 study, treating people as less than human also tends to dehumanize the perpetrator. Therefore, being ostracized leads to people feeling less human and seeing the person alienating them as less human as well. Number 2, it emotionally manipulates the other person. Many psychologists classify the silent treatment as a form of manipulation. It's a way for the perpetrator to maintain control over the conversation or argument. The silent treatment is equivalent to gaslighting, hence it's a form of emotional abuse. Number 3, it denotes rejection. Do you hesitate to reach out for their hand? Does it feel like there's a good chance of being turned away or even made to feel ashamed of the effort? During an argument, it's easy to justify your cold shoulder. It might seem like a good de-escalation tactic, but in reality, it's exacerbating the problem. The silent treatment serves to deny partners basic communicative needs, and therefore the person on the receiving end may feel rejected, especially if there is a physical aspect to the ostracization. Number 4, it instills self-esteem issues. A cold shoulder is a very active way of demeaning someone and telling them that they're worthless, regardless of the intention. It invalidates their opinions, thoughts, and emotions. A study from the University of Sydney shows that repeated ostracization can lead to the development of depression, eating disorders, and even suicide. Number 5, it produces physical pain. Scientists have shown that when you experience the silent treatment, the anterior cingulate cortex, a region that distinguishes levels of pain, becomes activated. As a result of someone's cold shoulder, you may experience digestive issues, headaches, or aches in your back or joints. And number 6, it destroys relationships. Communication has been called the fuel that keeps the fire of your relationship burning. The silent treatment often denotes an inability to communicate and low emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence lends a relationship with the sensitivity to figure out when something is wrong and resolve it, rather than climbing the high horse of the silent treatment. As a result, many of those who perpetrate it are not aware of its own harm. Repeated ostracization closes lines of communication and subsequently destroys a relationship. Whether you're the receiver or the perpetrator, trying to find a way to talk is always a good place to start. Making sure that you keep the lines of communication open and avoiding using accusatory phrases can help in talking your problems out.
In the foundations, I lay out what the pathology is, describe it in detail, leading to a set of 3 diagnostic indicators, those retractable claws, that will always show up with this particular type of pathology, cross-generational coalition with a narcissistic borderline parent, and will show up in no other pathology. No other pathology in all of mental health will produce this set of 3 symptoms. The first one is attachment system suppression toward a normal range parent. The child is rejecting a normal range parent. It's really weird. Now we're in attachment pathology, and that says there's pathogenic parenting somewhere. Second symptom is a set of 5 narcissistic personality traits in the child's symptom display. The child is showing 5 specific narcissistic symptoms: grandiose judging of the parent, a sense of entitlement, the parent's supposed to meet my needs, an absence of empathy for the parent, haughty and arrogant attitude towards the parent, and a splitting, a demonization of the parent. I call these the psychological fingerprints of control on the child by a narcissistic parent. We cannot control a child without leaving fingerprints of that control. And so that second symptom are the fingerprints. How does a child acquire narcissistic personality traits? Is that child narcissistic? No. It's because the parent is narcissistic, influencing the child, and it's the child is picking up the attitudes of this parent towards the other parent, the absence of empathy towards the other spouse, the haughty and arrogant attitude towards the other spouse. So that's the second symptom. Third symptom is that victimization symptom, that trauma reenactment, false one. That the child has a fixed and false belief that they are being victimized by the normal range parenting of the targeted parent. that it's abusive. I'm being victimized because my dad took my iPhone away. And it's a fixed and false belief. Where's that child getting that from? The narcissistic borderline parent who believes this false narrative of victimized child. And so the child is acquiring this encapsulated participatory delusion from the other parent. So we are essentially lifting the fingerprints of the pathogenic parenting from off of the child's symptom display. No other pathology, even authentic child abuse, will not show this set of symptoms. Child doesn't have a haughty and arrogant attitude towards their abuser. They don't have a sense of entitlement towards their abuser. No, authentic child abuse doesn't show these sets of symptoms. So we have three symptoms. We'll always define it. When you have a child who is this pathogenic parenting, pathopathology, genesis creation. So a parent who is creating pathology in the child, they are creating developmental pathology, suppression of normal range attachment, bonding motivations where the child's losing a parent. Narcissistic personality traits, they are creating a personality disorder in their child, and a psychiatric delusion in the child. When you have a parent creating that level of pathology in the child, the DSM-5 diagnosis for that is V995.51 child psychological abuse. And so right now in my practice, if I get this, that's the diagnosis, child psychological abuse. That's what I'm advocating that all mental health professionals start to use, child psychological abuse, and to assess along these lines.
Today's video regards a fairly somber topic touched on very briefly in my first video. And if you watch through until the end, I convey what I believe to be the silver lining in all this madness. If I'm being honest, this was not a video I wanted to do, but I was shocked at the dearth of information on this platform regarding the reasoning behind narcissistic child neglect. It is absolutely vital for survivors to recognize these patterns and address our subconscious grooming. Otherwise, we will continue attracting toxic and controlling people well into adulthood. This is more a general overview of the cluster B parenting style and why they don't teach their children. As always, this content is based solely on my insights as a narcissistic abuse survivor and a former codependent. We must realize narcissists have neither the ability nor the desire to raise a healthy, autonomous individual. For them, children are always a means to an end. Usually some combination of attempting to ensnare an empathic partner, resolve their own childhood issues through role reversal, garner external validation to reinforce their false self, and/or grooming a never-ending source of narcissistic supply, someone who is perpetually indebted and sacrificing to the narcissist, a potential forever caretaker, quite literally a codependent slave. As with most psychological disorders, narcissism falls on a spectrum, and some of these individuals can serve as passive caretakers. Remember, narcissists are hyper-vigilant individuals who assume everyone thinks like them, and their children are no exception to this worldview. All interactions are perceived as competition or manipulation, so they don't want to willingly give their children any advantages in this game. Cluster B parents also envy the attention and love children seem to so effortlessly receive. Now, this isn't always conscious or calculated. Remember, grandiose or lower functioning narcissists don't realize they're maladaptive. They genuinely believe they are perfect people with perfect parenting skills. The sad truth is these types don't teach their children simply because they don't see the child as worth teaching. Overt narcs see themselves as the only real people in existence. We are all just 2D holograms in their starring movie, and anyone who isn't them is perceived as a plaything or a fancy appliance. You wouldn't teach morals and life lessons to your Vitamix. It's the same mentality. They need the child cemented in unhealthy coping skills, trauma responses, and confusion. This is why they will take every opportunity they can to make their children feel dysregulated. These children will never have a safe base to explore the world and their own cognition. Instead, they'll be made to feel every mistake is the end of the world, that they can never trust themselves, and that their feelings and intuition must always be evaluated and questioned. This child is forbidden to individuate or have boundaries. Any form of uniqueness is loathed by the parent, and personal growth is detested. All of this cognitive dissonance causes extreme anxiety within the child, which is considered ideal for the disordered parent, as not only are anxious people easier to control, but narcissists absolutely revel in being surrounded by anxious, upset, exploitable people. It temporarily puts their troubled minds at ease. Remember, most cluster Bs are fear-based. This is why they prefer their worlds rigid, predictable, and under their control. They don't want their children able to make their own decisions because of the potential for uncertainty. These parents have no mechanism to internally validate themselves, so they must keep their children low vibration. They will always make the child feel inferior, inadequate, and worthless. Otherwise, they won't be able to project their own emptiness, subconscious shame, and emotional instability onto them. Misery truly does love company. If they don't get to have freedom and positive emotions, then why should you? Whether conscious or not, narcissistic parents perceive themselves as failures, so their children must fail too. And if the parent doesn't get to be authentic, then neither does the child. Cluster B types fear authenticity because their parents rejected their true self, so they will do everything they can get away with to prevent their child from self-actualizing. You having lack and insecurity in your life helps them regulate their own insecurities. If you were to become successful or well-adjusted, then they'll be forced to perceive you as more powerful than them. It's a reminder that they're imperfect. And these are perceptions that the narc spends their whole lifetime running away from, and why they use all their bandwidth projecting a false self and obtaining supply to buttress that false self. If they aren't the most intelligent, successful person in the room, if they aren't group leader, to them this equates to a reminder of their failures and vulnerabilities. All narcissists view confident, well-rounded people as a threat. Success in others forces them to reflect on why they couldn't achieve that same success. Remember, this is a person whose entire life is dictated by two drivers: narcissistic supply and pathological envy. So the false self must always exude either superiority or victimhood. This is why narcissists hate reality and have no interest in truth-seeking. They're all about appearances and reinforcing favorable narratives. Knowledge in children counteracts feelings of worthlessness, insecurity, and codependence, making them much harder to groom. The less knowledge their children obtain, the less they can trust themselves. This is why children are trained, not taught. Trained, not taught. Cluster B parents crave absolute power and control over their children, and independence is seen as a threat to the parents' inherent value. Decisiveness is perceived as rejection, so they make you think you're incapable of being right, that you're dumb and naive, and they need to be the interpreter of your reality, the arbiter of right and wrong, the sole source of validation for your thoughts and feelings. If people need their constant attention and reassurance, that props up the false self, reminding them that they actually exist. But if you have a healthy foundation in life, then they don't get to be your foundation. Childhood experiences transform into adult beliefs, and narcissists are well aware of this. They want to dictate how you show up in your relationships, so by keeping you in the dark and not giving you any social skills, the goal is to not only cause you to aim low in life, but to make others perceive you as low value as well. The other main reason for the child's cognitive neglect is to hide abuse. Higher functioning cluster Bs are well aware that their abusive nature contradicts their meticulously crafted public image. To combat this, they need their children powerless, hopeless, unintuitive, and innately broken, to make the child feel so fundamentally flawed that they deserve the mistreatment, and no one from the outside world could ever accept them. After all, if your own parent barely accepts you, then society at large certainly won't. This child is constantly reminded how lucky they are to have the parent in their life. If this child were to obtain life skills, that would risk them being able to differentiate right from wrong and see the abuse for what it is. A clear, perceptive mind usually doesn't tolerate or enable abuse and dysfunction. Eventually, their children become either too grown or too articulate to physically abuse, and at this point, the goal of the parent is to get the child to judge and criticize themselves. If it's your own mind doing the dirty work for the narcissist, then they are absolved from looking abusive. Narcissists learn from their parents that you're either a victim or a victimizer. Once they have children of their own, it is now time to relive their childhood. except now they're the ones in control. So they're going to do to you exactly what was done to them. To live out this power fantasy, they need you demoralized, gullible, and malleable. For it is the parent's job to define you, not yours. And you're not allowed to have hopes or dreams or goals because to the narcissistic mind, you having these things doesn't benefit them. Your only permitted functions are to cater to them, give them attention, and play one of two assigned roles, either the golden child or the scapegoat. The golden child's role is to make the narc look good in public, reflect back all the traits of the narc's false self, and to help the parent punish the outside world. The scapegoat's role is that of punishee, a psychological punching bag who masochistically accepts blame for all the family's problems and imperfections, and to absorb and personify all the traits the parent's false self either dislikes about itself or is unable to integrate. To accomplish the molding of these roles, the parent replaces the children's authentic selves with negative emotions and unresolved feelings. Otherwise, they wouldn't buy into the parent's grandiosity and narrative. Healthy coping skills and self-awareness threaten this shared fantasy, so instead the children are taught to believe that their value derives solely from what they can do for the parent. And remember, most cluster Bs can't or won't accept that they have unresolved childhood trauma, but they must appear perfect to the external world. So they'll craft narratives and situations that they can blame for their internal negative feelings. This is often accomplished through reactive abuse and triangulation of the scapegoat against the golden child, pitting them in a pseudo-competition for the parent's affections. It's a divide and conquer strategy that proves immensely amusing to the parent, fostering intense feelings of power and pleasure. Perhaps the most ironic reason for a narcissistic parent's neglect is to avoid abandonment. Narcs have a subconscious fear of abandonment and a conscious fear that you're better off without them. So the less you know, the more dependent you'll be. And the more dependent you are, the less successful you'll be. Less success means less likelihood of you escaping. So these parents will deliberately prime their children to be unable to support or care for themselves. If you feel ill-prepared for life, then you won't leave, thus remaining an evergreen supply source. Unfortunately, it's usually the parents' abusive and manipulative behavior that forces their children to go no contact. Out of all the narcissists' dysfunction, their attitude toward children has to be the most abhorrent. Purposely subjugating a tabula rasa child to chronic abuse, manipulation, and cognitive neglect, then using the child's reactions and mistakes to justify depravity, is a special kind of cruelty. But it is important to realize that your parent is emotionally stunted, unable to recognize intrinsic human value, and perpetually living in survival mode. They are a victim of the very same toxic familial cycle as you. So try to exercise understanding for them and kindness to yourself. Remember, you had to endure what you did to become the beautiful, intuitive, empathic force of kindness you are today. And the fact you still have the wherewithal to attempt to understand your childhood means your sense of self remains intact. That means your potential is limitless. The human brain is incredibly elastic. Healing is possible. Thousands have overcome this type of upbringing, and you will too.
So, what are the effects on the kids, right? Well, narcissistic step parents can have a profound effect, right? So, for example, each time a natural parent sides against a child with a step parent, the kid is going to feel like they're left standing alone and they're going to have feelings of betrayal and abandonment. Who could blame them? A lot of adults who had narcissistic step parents as children report that they felt like their parent was taken away from them or by the step parent, or that they lost their childhoods and the deep care and love of a real parent. These are kind of some of the after effects, right? Some of them go into psychotherapy to mourn the loss of that parent, literally, like almost as though that parent passed away. And of course, again, to deal with those feelings of abandonment and betrayal. So, how does this affect the narcissistic step parent, if at all? Unfortunately, sadly, they will feel little guilt for alienating and sometimes even completely destroying the relationship between parent and child. Because as they see it, they've won the attention game or whatever. And when the kids are adults, the narcissistic step parent will literally celebrate, yay, we're not responsible for those kids anymore. So what does it do to your child? What else does it do to your child, right? Well, as they grow older, they might they might be at risk of becoming narcissists themselves. And that's especially true for boys. But of course, for girls, they're more likely to become victims of narcissists themselves. In either case, I wouldn't want that for my kid. Do you want that for your kid? I don't think you do. So how do you protect your kids then from a narcissistic step parent? What can you do? Of course, you have to start by helping yourself, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that right now. Okay. First of all, you have to recognize that the emotional abuse that your kid had and that you had is going to leave scars that you can't see, right? Those are the real long-term effects of this type of abuse, and this pain will go on long after the child moves out from home or you actually leave the narcissist and move on. It's something that you really have to deal with. You have to recognize, first of all, recognize your own feelings. You might have a lot of guilt here, and you probably have some like seriously intense grief and disbelief and even just plain old pain, right? You might feel really ashamed of allowing your kids to get tangled up with a narcissist who is, even if it was your spouse or if you're a child, you might be seeing your mother feel that, right? And you know that when you were being abused by the narcissist, maybe you weren't the best parent you could be. Maybe you were not as, good of a parent as you wanted to be, or you're going to have a lot of guilt on your heart about that.
Moss. A woman has been sentenced to the gallows through the use of lethal injection for starving her stepdaughter till she lay lifeless in an Atlanta suburb in 2013. Tiffany Moss, 36, showed no emotion as the Gwinnett County jury delivered the penalty sentence. Moss was found guilty of all counts, including slaying, cruelty to children, and trying to conceal the passing of 10-year-old Imani Moss by burning her body in a trash can. Moss represented herself at trial and mounted no defense. She made no opening statement or closing argument and called no witnesses. Her penalty sentence was the first handed down in Georgia in more than 5 years. At trial, prosecutors painted a damning picture of Moss, who they said kept her young stepdaughter confined to a bedroom in their Lawrenceville area apartment, slowly starving her to her end. A medical examiner described how Imani wasted away without food or water and lived in waste in her own bed because she'd become too weak to move. Authorities say she weighed just 32 pounds when she passed away. All the while, the woman fed and cared for her own 2 children who lived in the same house. Prosecutors highlighted text messages sent by Tiffany Moss to her husband, Iman Moss, during the time when Imani was being starved. At least twice, Moss sent her husband pictures of meals she had prepared for him and the children that the couple shared. Prosecutors said it likely took weeks for Imani to pass away due to starvation. After the girl's passing, Tiffany and Iman Moss stuffed her emaciated body in a trash can and set it on fire. Iman Moss is serving life in prison without parole for his role in the crime after pleading guilty to felony slaying in 2015 in exchange for testifying against his wife.
I've made several different videos about the value in grown children breaking from their parents. I even wrote a book on it back in, I think, 2013. And one of the surprising things that I've had a lot of as the result of writing that book and making videos on it is I have had parents reach out to me saying, my children broke away from me. I'm estranged from my children. My children don't want to talk to me. They don't want a relationship with me. Or one of my children is gone and I don't know how to connect with him. And can you help me? Can you give me any advice? And many times they come in very heartfelt ways and they say, it's strange that I'm reaching out to you who made a video or wrote a book on the exact opposite, from the exact opposite perspective, but I felt maybe you would have some insight into how I might reconnect with my child, especially if my child is saying many of the same things that you advocate for, that you say in your book and in your videos. And I've actually talked to quite a few parents in return. I've wanted to help them. And it's an interesting thing. And sometimes maybe even help them make some progress. So what have I told parents? And this is what I want to make a video on. It might come across as a little strange. It might seem like, gosh, this seems contradictory. But actually, I'm not against parents having good relationships with their children. I'm actually all for that. So what do I tell parents? Well, the main thing that I tell parents when they've reached out to me, and I would say to parents in general, is take responsibility for your behavior. Look at the past. See what you've done. See the harm that you caused or may have caused your child or your children. See the ways in which you've caused them pain. See the ways in which you may have abandoned them without maybe even realizing it at the time. See the ways in which you neglected them. See the flaws in your parenting style, in your parenting attitude. Things you may have done wrong 20, 30 years ago. Maybe you've changed, but what did you do wrong? How did this negatively affect your child? And take responsibility for it. Now, what does it mean to take responsibility for it? What I see is taking responsibility for the errors that we've done, the bad behaviors that we have done, is first just in our own relationship with ourselves, acknowledging what we've done, acknowledging the unhealthy things that we've done, also acknowledging the negative consequences it's had on other people, and taking responsibility for that, saying, yes, it's true, I did that. Then a second part is changing the behavior, not doing that anymore. And also not pretending like it didn't happen. So owning it, being public about it. And the most important thing is to know it in one's relationship with one's own self, what one did that was wrong, that was unhealthy, the harm that one caused, and really to think about it. I think it's also very important for parents to consider, why did they do that behavior? Why did I do that behavior? Why did I cause harm to my children? I think it's really important for parents to look at their relationship with their own parents, because often when parents are estranged from their children, when their children don't want anything to do with them, it's a sign that the parents did some very unhealthy things in their relationship with their children that actually were replications of what happened in the parents' relationship with their own parents, and that maybe the child, their own children, are saying that's no longer acceptable, where often the parents themselves didn't figure it out in time and didn't put those boundaries with their own parents. So I think it's really valuable for people who have children who don't want anything to do with them to take the opportunity, take this distance, take all that pain that comes up from being rejected by their own children, and use it to grow, use it to study themselves, to look at themselves. Now, another thing is to listen to what your children, your estranged children, are saying is their reason for taking distance from you. And to try to sort it out, and to take it very, very seriously. Whatever they say, to really listen to it, to take it in, to come in with an assumption that actually there are some very, very healthy reasons why your child doesn't want to be close to you. Again, anything the child says, why they're taking distance, is worth considering. And also, a lot of times, what I hear is when adult children break away from their parents, the reasons they give are actually very legitimate. They're actually saying very, very healthy reasons why they're breaking away. They're not actually incorrect. They're saying, You mistreated me. You abused me in this way. You don't talk to me in a respectful way. You're not healthy toward me. You're not kind. Maybe you were good in some ways, but you did some horrible things. Maybe I need to take distance from you for a while. This is a bottom line. Regardless of what an adult child's reason is for taking distance from a parent, underneath it, there's always, always, always some healthy reason for it. There's always some healthy nugget of truth in why they're taking distance. The adult child may not always know what that reason is. The parent certainly may not always know what the reason is, but underneath it, there actually is always a healthy reason. So that, for me, is a healthy assumption to have. Because also, if the parent was so great and so consistent and so healthy, that child would not want to break away. It just wouldn't make sense. They'd want to continue that relationship with that really healthy, loving parent who historically was healthy and loving. So if they're breaking away, something went wrong. Something didn't go right. Now, another thing that can be really helpful for parents to do in these situations, often when parents go to their circle, their friends, they can go to other people in the family, often what they get is feedback that's not very objective. Often they get people who pretty quickly side with the parents. And it kind of makes sense, because a lot of times I think people seek out advice or counsel, or they seek out some sort of sounding board in someone who is going to tell them what they want to hear, someone who's not going to tell them something that's going to be really painful. And I think a lot of times in the situations where children have really pulled away from their parents and don't want anything to do with them, the underlying objective truth is actually going to be painful for the parents. So parents, if they're going to get someone to bounce these ideas off of, they need someone who's going to have the strength to be able to say, yeah, actually you really do have a part in it. And actually you have the bigger part in it because you were the parent. You were the one who set up this child-parent dynamic. You had the power in that historical relationship. And so if this dynamic gets ruptured and if this dynamic is screwed up, actually you were the one who created the basis of this dynamic. Now, it can be very, very hard for parents to find anybody who is going to be objective with them, because a lot of times we have a whole society, we have communities that are based on the sanctity of parents. And a lot of people don't want to give parents the bad news. They don't want to tell them, listen, you're really screwed up, and there's reasons your kid wants to get away from you. It's actually hard, I think, to find therapists who will say this. I think a lot of therapists, for starters, are parents and more intuitively side with the perspective of the parents. But I think it's also hard, even for therapists, to tell people things that they don't want to hear. I remember once I heard someone say, yeah, going to therapy is actually going to get the bad news, going to have someone who's going to tell you the bad news about yourself. And I thought, wow, actually that person is going to a pretty good therapist, because I think a lot of therapists, to keep the money flowing in, to keep that relationship with a client, to keep someone coming back again and again and again, to keep the comfort in the relationship, and this is not just therapists too, this can be ministers, this can be friends, this can be family friends, these can be other sorts of counselors, coaches. People want to tell people what they want to hear. A lot of time, what I've seen is when parents are in pain from basically being rejected by their children, they want someone who's going to make them feel good again. And a lot of times, I think, the rejection that parents feel from having their kids break away from them, all that pain that comes up from the parents, is actual abandonment that really is leftover abandonment from their own childhoods, their own history of abandonments. And sometimes their children can kick that up in them. And so when a therapist or a counselor or coach, minister, whatever it is, friend, hears that parent's pain, a lot of times they want to quell that pain. And they sometimes will sell out the parent's children. And I've heard it again and again and again. Therapists who say, oh, your kid is screwed up, your kid is an addict, your kid is a narcissist, your kid is a sociopath, your kid is selfish, your kid never took you seriously, your kid is rejecting all that you hold dear, your kid is turned against the ways in which you raised them correctly. And I don't buy that. And one of the big reasons is that if children grow up to have a lot of problems, if children grow up to be screwed up, if they have all these addictions or mental problems or whatever other problems they're going through, where did they learn that bad behavior? What kind of environment raised them to be screwed up? So the bottom line, if I can sum it all up, what is the best way for a parent to reconnect with their child when they are estranged from their children? The best way is to take responsibility for their own bad behavior, historical and recent and present, to behave in a more respectful manner to their children, to actually listen to their children and hear whatever it is that the child is saying is their reasons for breaking away. It's the job of the parent to really, in a fundamental way, to assess the objectivity of what the child is saying, to really make sense of it and to weigh it, and to really come in with the assumption that for whatever reason the child is breaking away, whatever they say, the reasons are fundamentally good, even if it's not exactly the reasons the child is saying. So to really figure out and understand, why would this kid want to get away from me? Why would a child want to break away from their parents? And to understand that fundamentally there must have been something that was troubling or screwed up in that historical relationship, and also in the recent relationship, and also to assume that the child's breaking away at some level, even though it may not always look that way, is a striving for the child to become more independent and more healthy, and for the parent to respect that. Also, the fundamental thing that a parent can do to try to rebuild their relationship with their child is to change their unhealthy behavior, to become healthier. Not just to apologize, to admit and say, I'm sorry, but yeah, that might be a real part of it. And I think ultimately it would be to say, yeah, acknowledge this is what I did wrong, to say it at some point, to put it out there. But the important thing is not just to apologize and keep doing the bad behavior, because I've seen that happen again and again and again and again. Parents, they do acknowledge some of their bad behavior, or maybe even a lot of their bad behavior, but they don't change at some fundamental level. They keep doing it. So to me, the most important thing in rebuilding any sort of healthy relationship between a parent and a child is for the parent to look at their unhealthy behavior and change it. And how do you change it? The way to change it is for the parent to continue looking at themselves, to study their own history, to see the ways in which they were abandoned, mistreated, or traumatized when they were children, and to grieve that, to heal that, and to regain, or maybe even to gain it in the first place, their sense of becoming an integrated human being, to become more mature, to really grow up, and in that way to be able to be more loving to their child, to be more respectful of their child, have healthier boundaries, to treat that adult like the adult, to respect the feelings of the child, also ultimately to become a healthy adult themselves.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it didn't turn red yet.
No, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Tell me about yourself.
Okay, I'm Gabrielle.
Give each other a chance.
Yeah, let's give each other a chance. Let's okay, you want to do that? I do see you as a friend, though. No!
How can you tell the difference between a person who is legitimately a victim of abuse and an abuser who is reversing roles and playing the victim? In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 ways that you can tell. Now first, for those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. I'm Shanine Megji. I'm a coach that helps people to heal and recover their identities from toxic relationships. I also help people to successfully navigate difficult life transitions. Welcome to my channel on Toxicity is Not Your Destiny. I create these videos to help you navigate toxic relationships in your life from a biblical, practical, and spiritual perspective. When an abusive narcissist is called out on their behavior, whether they are exposed or confronted, it is likely that they will play the victim rather than own up to their abuse. And why is that? Because a narcissist is forever running from their shame. In order to not feel any shame, they will project, deflect, manipulate anything to avoid facing their demons. Jennifer Freud, a psychology researcher, coined the term DARVO to explain one of the insidious ways that an abuser manipulates when being confronted. So DARVO stands for Deny, Attack, Reverse Victim, and Offender. Essentially, DARVO means that a narcissist will deny that they are being abusive. Then they will turn around and attack you, making your life miserable in some way to intimidate you so that you will stop confronting them. After that, they will reverse roles of making themselves into a victim and you as the offender against them. So if you're a third party hearing 2 stories, first, the story of the abusive narcissist who is positioning themselves as a victim and making the victim out to be the abuser, maybe even saying it is the victim who is the actual narcissist. And then second, you have the story of the victim who is expressing that it is the narcissist who is the abuser. Well, how can you tell the truth? There are 2 things to factor in when determining the truth, so you cannot just accept things at face value, but it's important to probe more deeply into these contentious relationships. So the first thing to factor in is that a narcissist doesn't function out of their true self, but rather out of a false self, which means that they have no stable interior core. So without that stable core, they're like a chameleon and they can reinvent themselves completely at every turn. So much so that they believe with all their hearts that they are the person they have reinvented themselves to be. So that is dangerous because a narcissist can cover up their abusive persona and reinvent themselves into a victim who claims to be afraid of the one who is calling them out on their abuse. And the other people seeing the narcissist in this convincing role may easily fall for it. Now, the second thing to factor in is that a narcissist engages in something called splitting, which is seeing everything in black and white. So they can easily villainize people and become so emotional, dysregulated, and antagonistic in their accusations. It can actually cause a third party to believe someone has wronged them terribly. In the third party's assessment, people just don't become so extremely emotional and wound up for no good reason. So a third party will assume that there must be a good reason why the narcissist is so extremely upset. A third party doesn't just naturally assume that a person sitting across from them could be a different breed of a human being, wired very differently with a predatory nature, especially if that third party has zero understanding of narcissism or the psyche of an abuser. A third party person is likely to instinctively believe that the abuser in your life is human just like them, and it will not be in their frame of reference to conceive that this person could be a wolf in sheep's clothing. And a narcissist, a third thing to factor in, I know I said 2, but a third thing to factor in is that a narcissist may go as far as injuring themselves on purpose to make it look like they were the abused ones in the relationship. So certainly a narcissist can play these cards when they engage in DARVO and reverse roles, which makes it difficult for a third party which has no knowledge of narcissism, psychopathy, or other cluster B personality disorders to see through. So with all that said, I'm going to share first one important thing you must do in order to see through a narcissist's manipulative tactics in engaging in DARVO, and then I'm going to give you 3 ways to see through it all. So here goes. The first thing you must do, understand first what are the fundamental motives behind a victim of narcissistic abuse and the abuser. Now, if an abuser is engaging in Darvo, look at the motive for Darvo. Darvo is a form of manipulation. It is also a way of fighting and deflecting and avoiding blame and shame. It is a way of avoiding taking responsibility and accountability. Typically, a victim of abuse wants to feel safe, they want to heal, and they may be open for reconciliation if their abuser was willing to do the long, hard work of facing their demons and dealing with their sin issues and character issues that led them to be abusive and possibly unfaithful in the first place. A true victim is seeking honesty and transparency from the abuser because that is foundational for healing. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." A victim of abuse is usually truth-seeking, whereas an abuser engaging in Darvo is usually truth-avoiding because they don't want to take responsibility. They do not want to own up to their part, but blame. An abusive narcissist has the following interests: to avoid being held accountable, to not lose their reputation, to maintain their status in the eyes of people, to not lose the benefits that they have been able to have through their abuse and manipulation and coercive control, to avoid shame, and to punish the people who confronted and or exposed them. Meanwhile, the victim's interests are to heal, to be heard, believed, and supported, for justice, for God to restore and redeem what has been lost, to possibly reconcile with his or her abuser if the abuser was willing to do the long and hard work of facing their demons and dealing with their sins and character issues that cause them to be abusive and possibly unfaithful in the first place. So in considering where both parties are coming from, you can probably tell who is a true victim and who is engaged in Darvo because their motives will inevitably leak out in their words and actions. The Bible says that out of the outflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So you can certainly know by paying close attention to what both parties are saying and not saying and how they say things, who is the victim and who isn't. And this was a tactic that King Solomon in the Old Testament used when two women brought a dead baby and living baby to him. Both of the women claimed that the living baby was theirs and the dead baby was the other's. So because Solomon could not tell which woman was lying and which one was telling the truth, with wisdom from the Holy Spirit, he announced that the living baby would be cut in half and each woman would be given a half. And so that was when the true motives of each woman were uncovered. The true mother objected to this solution and told Solomon, please just give the baby to the other woman. The mom could not bear the thought of seeing her baby get killed. Meanwhile, the other woman insisted that Solomon follow through with his ruling and cut the baby in half. So Solomon saw both their responses, and by their responses he could tell who the real mother was and who was not. And he ended up giving the living child to the woman who wanted him to live. So truly there was divine wisdom operating in Solomon in that story. And that is something you can certainly pray that God will grant to people who are listening to your story and the narcissist story. If a narcissist or abuser is avoiding accountability and seeking to deflect, you can be sure they will be more into a blame-shifting mode, of villainizing and demonizing the other mode. They are not looking to explore or dialogue or self-reflect because all that could mean uncovering the truth about what they've really done and who they really are. So when a person does a lot of blaming that is void from any self-reflection or self-awareness, a way to test where they're at is simply to ask them, what part did you have to play in this outcome? A narcissist would have a hard time answering that question. At best, they may say, yes, I'm not perfect and nobody's perfect. And if they were to say something like that, then you ask them to walk you through in detail about all the parts they had to play in creating their outcome. So asking them to do this will be difficult if a narcissist goes as far as to admit that they were wrong. If they were to admit that they were wrong, they will likely speak in generalities and not refer to anything specific and anything they did wrong. Narcissists generally do not look too deep in themselves, and they have little self-awareness. Now, if you were to ask a victim of narcissistic abuse this same question, this actually also may be hard for them too, because the question does insinuate blame and lack of belief if it's not mixed with love and compassion, and the victim has been falsely blamed so much and gaslighted. So it could be a hard question for them to swallow. So definitely you want to have an attitude of love and compassion in asking the question of either person. A victim is usually looking to tell their story. A narcissist, not so much. They're looking to play the victim by blame shifting. A victim, on the other hand, is looking to heal and possibly reconcile. So those goals require truth-telling and truth-facing. They will share more in a way that is self-reflective and that is storytelling. For so long, they have been voiceless. For them, it is about freedom and healing and knowing the truth, because it is the truth that makes them free. Narcissist is seeking to preempt the victim's story by starting a PR campaign and setting the tone first as themselves being abused or betrayed. Their interest is to maintain their image, so they are about doing whatever is necessary by preempting any possible damage to their reputations by controlling the narrative and what people might believe about them. On the other hand, victims are already so burned and depleted by the trauma they've been in that they're looking to heal and looking to share their story with safe and trustworthy people. A narcissist usually engages in splitting by seeing people as either all good or all bad. So because they see themselves as the victim and want to punish the other person for exposing them or betraying them, they will want to see that person punished or see their demise. So when they share, their intent is to punish or see retribution. They're not seeking for the rehabilitation and well-being of the victim, but quite the opposite. And that will come through in how they tell their story. On the other hand, a victim, as much as they have been hurt and traumatized by their abuser, their first and foremost goal is healing and telling their story and wanting honesty and transparency, because they have been lied to, manipulated, and deceived so much. They are not on a crusade to talk about wanting to see their abuser's demise or punishment. Now, granted, a victim may be very angry and they may very well want justice and revenge. It's natural to struggle with those feelings. And they may be tempted with the strong desire to see their abuser punished for their wrongdoings, especially if they seem to have gotten away with so much for so long. But unlike a narcissist, even if a victim is wrestling with all these angry, maybe even rageful feelings, they're not going to go around and craft their entire story around this one point, because a victim is not only dealing with anger, but with a complexity of many different emotions that they are holding together, such as grief and sadness and loss and fear, along with anger. While a narcissist tends to think only in black and white, in all good or all bad, a victim generally has the capacity to talk about the good moments in the relationship as well as the terrible moments, and conclude that the abusive narcissist was wearing a mask to conceal their true nature. But a narcissist cannot hold together the good, the bad, and the ugly of the person they abused, so they will see them as all bad and forget anything good that the person has ever done. They will recreate the reality of the relationship in a way to make it seem like it was all bad all along. So for them, they can paint a person as all bad and carry on their crusade of wanting to see them punished and looking to see their demise.
When narcissistic parents infantilize their children, they do this in order to maintain their power and control over their child or children's lives. This is simply the act of prolonging the infant stage in a person by treating them as an infant. They do not see their child's age. They do this to make the child feel incompetent. Each time the child tries something new, they try to take over it or just remind the child that they cannot do that, even though the child can clearly do it themselves. This is something that they never stop doing, even as the child becomes an adult. You see, it's the child's independence that threatens the narcissist. All they see is their supply fading away. It is always about the needs of the narcissist. The narcissist remains true to form and views their child as an extension of themselves. And so as this child grows and becomes more independent, the narcissistic parent will guilt trip them, control them. They'll employ fear tactics and any and all manipulation tactics from their toolbox. As the child becomes a teenager, they naturally want to spread their wings a little more. And the narcissistic parent is threatened by this. They will undermine and criticize the child's abilities. They do this through devaluation, and they treat their teenager like a toddler. And sadly, this carries on into adulthood. You see, the narcissistic parent will express displeasure at their adult children. Sometimes it's as though, or sometimes it's through a particular look. They may just look at them and, in a way that says that I'm very displeased with what you are doing. And it's that look that speaks 1,000 words. The look that expresses just how much of a failure the child is in their parents' eyes. This is manipulation. They question the choices of their adult children. It reinforces the notion that the adult child cannot trust themselves. A lot of times when children are raised by narcissists, they are not allowed to see themselves. They're never validated. And so that in turn makes them, in some instances, they just feel unseen, or they don't trust their own decision making. And this is what the narcissistic parent is trying to do even as they're an adult.
This is a fact. My mother comes first because paradise lies under her feet. I agree. Your mother definitely does come first. But if the paradise is there in the first place, some mothers have hell beneath their feet. May Allah protect us. What this means is, what paradise do you want under her feet? She will begin to tell you to do things which are detrimental to your own self. Then you want to use this excuse to continue listening to what she's saying. She will land you in the same place she has landed.